Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is not doing well at the box office. It had an absolutely abysmal Memorial Day weekend, failing to even meet the lowest of predictions for the film's opening weekend. But while the film is doing absolutely terrible at the box office for itself, it may portend even worse for a pair of upcoming Marvel Cinematic Universe films, namely Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts. Joining me to discuss this is none other than Culture Casino. How are you doing,
Hey,
sir?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to be here. Let's talk about it.
Yes, so I wrote this article up at thatparkplace.com, a little bit of an op-ed here. And my thesis is basically that Furiosa does not have Mad Max in it. It is a quote unquote Mad Max film, but it doesn't have Mad Max, the main character, and it has done absolutely terrible at the box office. And I think this means that Marvel's Captain America Brave New World, which is a Captain America movie without Captain America, Steve Rogers, and their upcoming Thunderbolts film, which doesn't have any of the original Thunderbolts team in it, are going to have the same fate and probably do even worse because it's likely these Marvel movies have a much bigger production budget than Furiosa and Mad Max Saga.
Oh, I agree. I mean, out of the box, I would say that, the $168 million mistake that was Furiosa, the non-Mad Max film, also is very cheap compared to probably the 380 to $410 million Captain America, whatever they're calling it today, movie that's coming out without Captain America, as you mentioned, and the Thunderbolts, which surprised me that there was not an original team member in there at all. When I saw it, I was laughing. That one I don't know. That one was destined to be a flop because there's no touchstone character in there for any of the existing audience to like grab onto. So I mean, nobody knows who Sentry is. Nobody knows who most of these characters are. So it's going to be difficult for them.
The
And
character that they did know was Baron Zemo,
right.
and Daniel Bruhl has made it clear he's like, yeah, I'm not. They haven't talked to me. I'm not in it.
Oh, that's bad news. That's really bad news. So, and I have this strange feeling, John, and that is this last weekend was the audience telling Hollywood, do better, Senator.
I get what you're saying here. I'm not going to spoil that for people that don't know the reference, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's funny. So let's go into some of these numbers here. We have this. The numbers reports that Furiosa Mad Max Saga only grossed 25.5 million in its domestic opening weekend. It did another 33.3 million at the international box office for a worldwide gross of 58.8 million, which is just absolutely terrible. I think the Fury Road did what, like 100 something, maybe. I don't
It
remember.
it did really well,
Was,
surprisingly. Off the top of my head, I don't know that I can pull the number, but I do know that it did very well comparatively to this film.
it also
The
had the character of Mad Max in it.
I guess, or the Tom
He
Hardy
was he was
version.
in it. I mean, it was highly
Uh,
promoted that Mad Max was going to be in it. Obviously, like he was a side character, a supporting character. He wasn't the main character, but the
right.
film was promoted, was marketed as a Mad Max film, and he was the main character. Obviously, we found out that he wouldn't be, and
Well, when you look at the numbers, John, when you look at the number in the weekend performance, consider this: this film made less than the 2015 film opening weekend. When the original Fury Road film opened up in 2015, it made $45,428,000. So if you adjust that for inflation, it's considerably more. This film is nowhere close, and that was just the domestic audience, right? You're looking at
correct.
a worldwide gross of 58.8 million opening weekend for this particular film. Yeah, I'd say it's not doing well. Say some
Yeah,
say
absolutely
something
terrible.
more.
And we have an estimated production budget from Variety. It says 168 million now. It's
Mhm.
likely it might even be higher. Usually
Oh,
these
yeah.
production budgets, estimations that we get from the trades, from Hollywood Reporter, from Variety, from Deadline, we find out that they're a lot lower than what they actually are. Caroline Reed over at Forbes has done really good work figuring out a lot of these production budgets based on UK filing reports and figuring out what the code names are for a lot of the Marvel movies, etc. And we find out that they're sometimes two, maybe even three times what they are estimated to be. So even with this estimated production budget, Furiosa has to make close to 420 million if you use kind of the conservative 2.5 times factor, and it's unlikely it's going to get there. There's absolutely no way, even if you have like a really strong legs, like 50% drop, usually second weekend, that's usually pretty strong. There's absolutely no way that this film is going to get anywhere close to that $420 million mark. So this movie is pretty much dead. It's a loser. It's going to be losing them lots of money. But what I found even more interesting is that the minimum prediction from Box Office Fury, Box Office Theory, not Fury. That'd be so funny. That'd be a funny site. That'd be a nice site name. But Box
Yes, it
Office
would.
Theory, which is Sean Robbins. He previously worked at Box Office Pro.
Yep.
He did a lot of their forecasting predictions. He was predicting on his new site that the minimum this film would do on May 16th was 46.5 million over the 3-day. Clearly did not do that at all. We're looking at didn't even do half of that almost.
No.
I mean, that's how abysmal this film did. What do you make of that? Like, why were the minimum predictions so off on this film? Do you think that they were just so heavily focused on what the Fury Road film did and hadn't kind of factored in the change in movie audience, didn't factor in the fact that this wasn't actually a Mad Max film because Mad Max wasn't in it? Why do you think that these predictions were so off? Because usually Sean
Well,
Robbins is pretty
he he
accurate.
yeah, he's one of the best at predicting it. Usually he's within a couple million of the actual number. So I mean, and sometimes even right on the number. So it's very impressive what he's able to do and has been doing for a long time. But again, he's looking at some early numbers, that he kind of adjusts on the fly. But as of May 16th, what we didn't realize was probably, or what he didn't realize is the struggle that the domestic public has right now with every single dollar they're spending. I think that being able to eat is more than what seeing a film is. A film is a luxury, and I think the economic situation and the uncertainty, and just the recent performance of other films probably weren't taken into account. The biggest thing was Furiosa really an important character that you needed to have a backstory on? It's the same kind of problem that we ran into with Solo. If you want to look at a comparative, why nobody wanted to see a Han Solo a prequel film. Maybe a few people did, but not that many. It's just how important is the backstory? And in this one, you already knew Furiosa's end. You did not need the beginning. Not to mention the fact that word of mouth, I think, played largely into this film not getting the kind of box office at all. But and again, all you can go off is what the studio numbers are, which is part of his equation. I'm certain what the studio projects the film to do, which is usually a little on the conservative side. So,
Mhm.
he probably took those numbers, previous performance, adjusted for inflation, and said, this is probably the number that we're going to be at. And I think that's how he arrived at that conclusion. Because it certainly wasn't based on decent films that have come out recently, like Fall Guy and things like that just fell under the bus and, got destroyed. So,
Yeah, or
yeah.
even what is it? The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare as well,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I think that suffered from too much name, but largely,
Possibly. So
No, yeah, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
I do think there is still this dynamic, the fact that the main character is not in the actual film, like of like Mad Max. Like I think Gary did a pointed this out here. He's responding to this absolutely ridiculous IGN article. Furiosa, why the Mad Max movies don't need Mad Max anymore. I mean, shocker. IGN pushing an agenda, trying to kick the main characters out. What is it like? What is the slogan that they all adapt from The Last Jedi? Let the past die, kill it if you have to. That's exactly what they're trying to do here
Mhm.
with Furiosa, which is ironic because they're almost like rewriting the past with this prequel in Furiosa. But Like, what do you like? Do you think this played a big factor in it? That Mad Max isn't in the film for the most part at all. It's not about Mad Max. It's about Furiosa instead. I mean, you were kind of talking about that. We already know her story,
Yeah, a
etc. from
lot of
Fury
it.
Road.
No, I think you're 100% on, but they're approaching all of this as this particular thing is a mantle that could be passed on, which is why you have, as we mentioned at the beginning, Captain America film without Captain America, right? You have all these things that aren't actually what they were. These are mantles that can be passed on. These are interchangeable, and honestly, you can't just use names and titles that way because they actually mean something. There's always been a suggestion, and this is something that our friend Mr. H from Mr. H Reviews talks about, that Mad Max was kind of an unreliable narrator story, right? The films that we got previously, and that you didn't know if we were seeing a reflection of a tale that was being told by Mad Max, or if we were actually seeing the events happen, as Mad Max. And the same thing kind of played into the Fury Road, and then again into this particular film. But I don't know, less than 30-second appearance of Mad Max's back in his car on a dune overlooking a stumbling and falling Furiosa, which is actually happens in this film. Spoilers, sorry for that. Not really. It's a terrible movie. But the that particular moment is not Mad Max. First of all, we know it's not Mel Gibson. Second of all, you don't really see him. It's just like this isn't an accurate representation of this character. And it was for a fleeting moment that could have been thrown away. In fact, most of this film could have been thrown away. It was too long, and it pointed out the fact that it was unneeded. That honestly, if you watch the first act of this, you're going to be like, we really didn't need this movie."
I didn't need it because I didn't see it, but so I'll admit that.
Fair enough.
Um, but let's get into this. Like, so
Sure.
obviously we kind of talked about this at the top of the video here, that we do have Captain America: Brave New World. It is not going to feature Steve Rogers. It's not featuring Chris Evans as Captain America as the actor. I think you can recast someone, but Steve Rogers is Captain America, just like Peter Parker, Spider Man, etc. Bruce Wayne is Batman. Those characters are they can't be like, you can't like kind of change them, right? That's who they are. They're integral to the characters. And so not only are we not getting Captain America, but Anthony Mackie says we're not even getting a good versus bad fight, right? Which
Yes.
is like, what is he, what are you even doing a superhero movie for then if you're not doing good versus evil, good versus bad? This is what he told Entertainment Weekly. He says this movie is a clear reset. It really reestablishes the idea of what this universe is and what this universe is going to be. I think with these movies, you're getting a clear new branding of what Marvel is headed towards, the same way they did with Captain America: Winter Soldier. The title implies that there's a new, bigger enemy now. I'm not sure if that's the case. I feel like it's a very big reference to the novel Brave New World and how everyone is just kind of sedated by pleasure. I don't know. Maybe I guess there's a number of ways you can read into that.
Well, the way I read into it is he's kind of saying the things that you don't want to say out loud, and that this is basically, there are no bad guys. There's just a group of elite people, and there's a group, and everybody else. That's kind of, this is the thing that the language he uses and how it's couched and everything else makes me worried about just how much political garbage is going to be in this
There's
at a
no good and
time.
evil. It's just about power.
Yeah, exactly, which that's very neo-Marxist of him. I mean, that's truly what the way that one particular side of the establishment thinks about things.
And
So
that's also
it
not something Captain America would
no,
even
no.
enter his mind. He would
Yeah,
be
well,
completely opposed to that idea.
they don't like Captain America. They don't like American exceptionalism. They don't like the tenacious underdog, in pursuit of greater things, not just for himself or others. They prefer narcissism. Disney storytelling now, just look at anything from animation and like things like Wish and this new film coming out, with anxiety and all of that. These are not story elements that you can, wrap around things that are going to be good for someone's outcome. No, these are always, seeking the the mediocre or below. The lowest common denominator is the way I used to describe it. So anyway, sorry, we've gone off on a tangent, but
No, that
I
was
have a
perfect.
I have a feeling that's relevant here.
It is.
Yeah.
The title implies that there's a new, bigger enemy now. There's a new frontier that we have to conquer. From Captain America: The First Avenger to Endgame, the enemy was always good versus bad. Yes,
Yeah.
very clear.
Yeah.
Now that we've conquered that, where do we go from here? Like this is not something that Captain America would, like I said earlier, this would not enter into his process. He's always fighting himself too. I mean, there's always something out there that's evil. Whether that's like it can even be in the U.S. government. We've seen him abandon his role as Captain America in the comics because of like what people were doing. There's always going to be that good versus evil, that good versus bad fight. This idea that you've like somehow conquered it is just utterly ridiculous. It's like a big lie that we've defeated it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Like what?
No. And forgive me for not taking their word for it because there's always good versus evil. There always has been, and it's never been conquered. And one of the reasons the comics fell off, and I'm sure you know this, John, is that they did this kind of thing. They tried to reboot and they tried to go after these very un-American, non-Western values, non-civilization oriented storytelling mechanisms that don't hold any water. You cannot tell a compelling story while also giving a lecture on everything else that you think is wrong with everything that came before, which is what gosh, when they created Falcon Cap in the television series, we got a little foreshadowing of. In fact, I actually did a little foreshadowing earlier in the video. Do better, Senator.
Do
Anyway,
better.
that's right.
Yes. And then he goes, but this is what doesn't even matter. He says when good versus bad has been conquered, and then he says when the bad guys reappear, in what form are they reappearing? It is a new storyline with new characters, with new beliefs, and it creates a new idea of this new world that we're going into. It's Captain America without Captain America. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe without the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's Marvel without Marvel. Who is going to go see this film? It's Mad Max without Mad Max. It's Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga without Mad Max. That's exactly what this is, and I think it's going to suffer the exact same fate as this Mad Max film. And it's not the only one,
No.
because we have Thunderbolts here too. The original team was Citizen V, Mach 1, Songbird, Techno, Atlas, and Meteorite. However, they were actually Baron Zemo, Fixer, Beetle, Screaming Mimi, Goliath, and Moonstone. Instead of featuring this team or even like a portion of the team, remember, they actually did get the Guardians of the Galaxy characters right. I know that there's some debate over how they act. And there's like Cyclops' dad and his team is kind of like the vibe that James Gunn took and applied to the Guardians of the Galaxy. I understand that. But at least they used the characters. They're not even using any of the characters. We get gender swapped Ghost. We get Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova. We get the Winter Soldier. We get gender swapped Taskmaster. We get U.S. Agent, Red Guardian, and then Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Literally no members of the Thunderbolts in the movie called Thunderbolts. And then the villain apparently is the Sentry, which I don't think have the Thunderbolts ever fought Sentry? They probably have at some point, but it's not like their main storyline.
Nemesis, yeah. John, I wish I could say I was surprised, but I'm not. I just am not.
You can't make this up. You're making a movie called Thunderbolts without any Thunderbolts in it.
I don't know. I've been at a loss forever when it comes to these things, and I'm at a loss for the fact that they didn't actually keep the team intact. Again, this speaks to the point that they think all of these elements are mantles that can just be put on by anybody, and it's been proven that that doesn't work because look at what they've done, with the Marvels, Captain Marvel and the Eternals and all of these other, characters that you're like, you can't just throw these mantles on things. You can't make these radical changes. They're not going to jive with the fans. And you have to figure out story wise how to either explain it or take the mass differences into account when you're storytelling. And you're doing that on top of, as I mentioned before, trying to teach everybody a lesson, proselytizing, lecturing, whatever word you want to use. Um, and still try to tell a compelling story, which is impossible because nobody's been able to do it in the what 7 or 8 years they've been trying to force this stuff into the public zeitgeist. You don't have to go that far back. I mean, look at what they did with the Ghostbusters. I talked about that just recently, Ghostbusters 2015 or whatever. That was terrible. I mean, and again, it came down to not telling a compelling story because you were on the backs of, well, silliness on top of agenda. This is the same problem. And sorry, I again tangent. Apologize. So yeah,
No, it's fine.
yeah.
And so we do have this confirmation here from Daniel Bruhl. He told this to Screen Rant. He says, I guess that if he shows up, he's talking about Baron Zemo. Again, you really need to carefully think, what is this crazy little guy up to this time around? So if the right opportunity would come, I wouldn't say no, obviously. But for now, I'm into other things that I'm very happy with because that might have collided. So he's clearly saying he's not in the Thunderbolts film. He's doing other things. And he goes on to say, I think they're shooting Thunderbolts right now. So the destiny and fate always, I strongly believe in that. You just follow the path that you are offered to follow. So we know, at least if we believe what Daniel Bruhl is saying here, that Baron Zemo, the main character of the Thunderbolts team, is not going to be in the movie. So just
Well,
I
and
don't understand this idea of trying to create something that doesn't even have anything about the original in it at all.
well, and again, I mean, Sentry's been swapped about too, or at least it was going to be. I'm not sure who the new Sentry is because they've changed that around. But I still like you. I don't understand why the first villain is that, and I don't understand why all the changes. And again, I mean, this comes down to the fact that they just are repurposing names because it's the in name only universe now. That's what we're dealing with.
Well, what's even crazy is that the Thunderbolts isn't really like a big brand name
No.
outside of the comic book comics either. You think you would like tease that or introduce that before they even forgot how to do these things. They've been so captured by this ideology that you're saying they don't even realize what they had done previously by, hey, let's set up a Black Panther movie by having Black Panther as a having a great subplot in our Captain America Civil War movie. Let's kind of set up these other characters in these other movies before we spin them out into their own movies. That's what they kind of used to do. Obviously, you have exceptions like Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy and things like that. But a lot of times they did indeed set up a lot of these characters previously in their other films.
Well, I guess you have to ask yourself why they forgot that or why that isn't important. And they had organizational changes on a huge level. The loss of Ike Perlmutter certainly changed the way they were going to go about presenting things because they no longer got pushback from somebody who was invested in maintaining Marvel as the brand that it was. And again, it comes down to what Disney has been doing the last is again, I'll go back to the last 7 or 8 years. In fact, all of Hollywood has been. They're getting away from the things, the culture that made those elements, IPs, whatever, successful, and they're leaning into the less successful things that they've tried. Obviously, you're looking at the less successful version of some comic characters that now we're just going to be stuck with. Both of these films, I'm gonna make a suggestion. Deadpool Wolverine's gonna lose money. I know that people are gonna find that hard to believe.
I agree with you,
Captain
actually.
the new in name only Captain America, whatever they figure out the name to be, because they could change it again. I don't know, but that's gonna flop because of how much money they've spent on it so far. And this film is a definite flop because it's an ensemble. It's going to be too many people, too many salaries, too many locations, too many backstories. it's going to cost too much and it's going to fail. And then I'll give you something else that's not going to do well. The new Daredevil series that's going to be on Disney Plus. I don't see Disney producing a winner out of Marvel. I don't.
I 100% agree with you. I think over the past couple of years, we haven't really seen them do that. I guess there's an argument to be made that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 did make some profit. I think there's dispute about that, given the fact that, like, as we said, Carolyn Reed's digging up actual what production budgets were, a lot higher than what initial estimates were, meaning that that movie likely didn't make as much profit or probably lost money. And then we also obviously have massive losses in the Marvels, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We're seeing Echo just die on the vine on Disney Plus, literally out of the Nielsen numbers immediately. Almost everything on Disney Plus is seemingly a loser. We're seeing decline across the board for the Marvel shows. Loki season 1, I think, had the exact same amount of viewership time as the all 5 episodes of Echo. So the first premiere of Loki season 1 had 741 million minutes. That was the same as all 5 episodes of Echo, despite there being some like 30 million more Disney Plus subscribers in the United States. So clearly the people that are subscribing to Disney Plus are not subscribing for these Marvel shows, and they're not watching them at all. So I think a lot of your predictions are accurate. I think they're backed up by a lot of data. Obviously, we're not like doing a deep dive into it, but that is definitely stuff that I have seen. And I think that you're probably right on that. And I actually do agree with you on pretty much all of your predictions.
Wow. Well, thank you. I hope they bear out to be true because again, I think a lot of us saw all of this coming, whether it be streaming or what was going to happen in the cinema post Endgame. So I also look, I think that the economic situation is playing a bigger role than people even realize, and I think that we're going to see Hollywood in general have a very rough 2024 and probably a rough start to 2025.
Yeah, it's already off to a really bad start at the box office. I think with the big summer season coming, we're already seeing it go off to an absolutely abysmal start here on Memorial Day. I think it's like we're looking at the worst Memorial Day weekend in all of the box office history.
Mhm.
And it's going to get even worse as we're going to see a lot of these movies not really bring in people to go and watch them during the summer. Does not look like there is a Barbie, does not look like there is a Top Gun Maverick to kind of really balloon it. And I don't think maybe people will argue that Deadpool and Wolverine is that film. I just don't think it is. I think the R rating is going to hold it back. But time will tell. And obviously, we already talked about how the budget appears to have significantly ballooned for that film as well, which I think will hold back its profitability, even if it does have decent box office grosses. But I want to thank you, Culture Casino,
Yeah.
for joining us here, having this discussion about the future of Marvel and how Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, portends really bad things for Marvel and 2 of their big upcoming films that they really need to be a success. And it just does not look like they're going to do that based on the fact that they kind of doubled down on these movies, on these stories, instead of maybe doing what they kind of are doing with Daredevil and trying to reconfigure it. But even then, as you said, it's unclear if that will even do the trick, given the fact that the people that they have working there seemingly are unable to uh, kind of think outside of that woke mind virus that has infected them. But where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me at Culture Casino. I make it as easy as possible. Culture Casino on YouTube, Rumble, Minds, Odyssey, Getter, and Twitter.
All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you hopefully very soon.